सबसे पहले सबको जय भीम। हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे। साथ में गा सकते हो आप, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे। वो दिन के जिसका वादा है, जो लोहे अज़ल में लिखा है, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे। जब जुल्म सितम के कोहे गरा, जब जुल्म सितम के कोहे गरा, रूई की तरह उड़ जाएंगे। जब जुल्म सितम के कोहे गरा, रूई की तरह उड़ जाएंगे। हम महकूमों के पाँव तले, ये धरती धड़ धड़ धड़केगी, और हकम के सरों पर, और हकम के सरों पर जब बिजली कड़ कड़ कड़केगी, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे। जब अर्ज़े खुदा के काबे से, जब अर्ज़े खुदा के काबे से सब बुत उठवाए जाएंगे, हम अहले सफा मरदुदिए हरम मसनद पे बिठाए जाएंगे, सब ताज उछाले जाएंगे, सब ताज उछाले जाएंगे, सब तख्त गिराए जाएंगे, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे, हम देखेंगे। थैंक यू सो मच।
तो इसके बाद हम एक स्टेटमेंट आई है, जैसा कि आप लोगों को पता है, मुंबई राइजेस टू सेव डेमोक्रेसी, जो 40 से ज़्यादा संगठनों का एक प्लेटफॉर्म जो खड़ा हुआ था भीमा कोरेगांव के अरेस्ट के बाद। तो उससे ज़्यादातर हमने भीमा कोरेगांव के साथियों के बारे में काफ़ी बात रखी है बीच बीच में, और बीच में कोविड की वजह से हम बहुत बार मिल नहीं पाए, लेकिन बातचीत जारी थी। तो जेल से कुछ साथियों ने स्टेटमेंट भेजा है, तो हम चाहेंगे कि उससे थोड़ा शुरुआत करें प्रोफेसर साईबाबा को ट्रिब्यूट देने के लिए।
Statement is from BK accused, those who are languishing in jail on the fabricated case. First, a few memories of Sai. Professor G.N. Saibaba was a crucial rallying point for many people's movements of diverse aspirations, all having the same grievances of being at the receiving end of anti-people policies of the state. He was a champion of democratic rights of the oppressed, discriminated, and marginalized sections of our society. His vision and insatiable drive for change brought in numerous people's movements under a single umbrella, with a common agenda to fight for the lives and livelihoods of the oppressed. He was one of the founding members of Committee for the Release of Political Prisoners. He had, for the first time, organized a countrywide as well as international opinion against the massive displacement, destruction and destitution of the Adivasis of central and eastern India caused by the Indian state under the garb of development. He also championed the vision to articulate an alternative model of development called the People's Model of Development. Sai was easily accessible to anyone interested in issues affecting the people of India. He never ever backtracked from his unflinching commitment for the struggle for a just society, despite being limited by adversities in the form of state repression or being a person of acute physical disabilities. Every people's issue was of immediate significance or interest to Sai, whether it was pertaining to students, Adivasis, oppressed nationalities, or issues pertaining to agrarian crisis, caste oppression, or of those put behind bars for their political convictions. In fact, Saibaba's legacy should be a moving spirit for all of us who share his dream for an equitable, just society in India as well as the world. प्रिय साथी साई, माझा दोस्त, लढ्यातील साथी, जनमुक्त लढ्याचा योद्धा आज आपल्यापासून हिरावून घेण्यात आलेला आहे. त्याच्या अपार दुःख, हताशा आणि राग माझ्या सकट आम्हा सर्व एल्गार बंधांना मध्ये दाटून आलेला आहे. आपल्या तथाकथित लोकशाहीत आपल्या हक्कासाठी व जनतेच्या न्यायासाठी आणि मुक्तीसाठी लढणं, बोलणं, लिहिणं आज धोकादायक आणि जीव घेणं गोष्ट झालेली आहे. ही साईच्या अकस्मात मृत्यूतून समोर आलेली लढा आहे. हा मृत्यू नसून व्यवस्थेने थंड डोक्याने घेतलेला बळी आहे. जसा मध्य भारतातील जल, जंगल, जमीन, इज्जत आणि संस्कृतीसाठी गुलगुलान करणाऱ्या आदिवासी विरुद्ध असाच थंड डोक्याने जुलमी राज्यसत्तेने सालवा जुदूम व ऑपरेशन ग्रीन हंट या नावाने बळी घेतला जात आहे. साही याच कुटील आणि शांत डोक्याने चालवण्यात येणाऱ्या अन्यायी युद्धाविरुद्ध आपला आवाज बुलंद करीत होता. याशिवाय भारतीय संविधानाची अंमलबजावणी करण्यात यावी यासाठी तो जनलढे व लोक प्रबोधन करीत होता. याची किंमत त्याला कठोर तुरुंगवासात झाली. 10 वर्षाचा तुरुंगवास साईला मृत्यूकडे घेऊन गेला. इटलीच्या मुसोलिनीने जसा ग्रामसीचा मेंदू काम करू नये म्हणून तुरुंगात चढवला, साईच्या मृत्यूची तुलना आजचा नव फॅसिस्ट राज्यसत्तेच्या कृतीशी करणे योग्य राहील. साई हा जनतेचा, मुक्तीचा प्रवक्ता होता, आयडियलॉग होता. तो आणि त्याचा विचार राज्यसत्तेच्या अशा दमनाशी नष्ट केला जाऊ शकत नाही. जोपर्यंत शोषण, जुलूम, अन्याय व ब्राह्मणिकल फॅसिझमचा विरोधातल्या लोक लढाईत राहील तोपर्यंत कॉम्रेड साईचा आवाज जिवंत राहील. कॉम्रेड साईला जय भीम, लाल सलाम.
मैम, मायशा से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि वो एक अभी प्रोफेसर साईबाबा के 2 पोएम्स हैं, वो आपके सामने रखेंगी.
यहाँ उपस्थित सभी साथियों को मेरा क्रांतिकारी जय भीम, लाल सलाम. मैं साथी साई की कविता पढ़ने से पहले लोकशाही शंतनु कामले की 2 लाइन, उनके गीत के 2 लाइन बोलना चाहूंगी. आठवा आपला भगत सिंग कसा कसा लढला, पळून का दुनिया सारी बदला बदला र, पळून का दुनिया सारी बदला. और इसी के साथ मैं 2 और लाइन जोड़ना चाहूंगी. आठवा आपला साथी साई कसा कसा लढला, आपला आठवा आपला साथी साई कसा कसा लढला. कळू नका दुनिया सारी बदला बदला र, कळू नका दुनिया सारी बदला, कळू नका दुनिया सारी बदला बदला र, कळू नका दुनिया सारी बदला. साथी साई शहीद हो सकते हैं लेकिन मर नहीं सकते. उनकी कविताओं ने उनको अमर कर दिया है. उनकी कविताओं में लिखा हजारों क्रांतिकारियों का संघर्ष, हजारों आदिवासियों का, दलितों का, मेहनत कशों का संघर्ष भी अमर हो गया है. साथ ही साई ने अपनी कविताओं से दुनिया को आईना दिखाया. कई बार कविताओं में अपने खुद के बारे में लिखा, लेकिन फिर हम सबको अपने अंदर के इंसान और हिम्मत को जगाने का संदेश दिया. तो मुझे साथी साई की 2 कविता पढ़ने के लिए बोला गया, जिसमें से पहली कविता है I refuse to die. I refuse to die. When I refused to die, my chains were loosened. I came out into the vast meadows, smiling at the leaves of grass. My smile caused intolerance in them. I was shackled again. When I defied death again, tired of my life, my captors released me. I walked out into lush green valleys under the rising sun, smiling at the tossing blades of grass. Infuriated by my undying smile, they captured me again. I still stubbornly refuse to die. The sad thing is that they don't know how to kill me. They don't know how to kill me because I love so much the sounds of growing grass. और जो दूसरी कविता मैं पढ़ना चाहूँगी, ये कविता प्रोफेसर जीएन साईबाबा ने केंद्रीय जेल नागपुर में अंडा सेल से अपने माता की मृत्यु से पूर्व लिखी थी. जीएन साईबाबा को मृत्युशैया पर पड़ी माता से मिलने की इजाज़त भी नहीं दी गई. तो ये कविता का नाम है और ये एक अनुवादित कविता है. माँ मेरे लिए मत रोना, माँ मेरे लिए मत रोना, जब तुम मुझे देखने आई तुम्हारा चेहरा मैं नहीं देख सका था. फाइबर कांच की खिड़की से मेरी अशक्त देह की झलक यदि मिली होगी तुम्हें, यकीन हो गया होगा कि मैं जीवित हुआ. माँ घर में मेरी गैर मौजूदगी पर मत रोना. जब मैं घर और दुनिया में था, कई दोस्त थे मेरे. जब मैं इस कारागार के अंडा सेल में बंदी हूँ, पूरी दुनिया से और अधिक मित्र मिले मुझे. माँ मेरे गिरते स्वास्थ्य के लिए उदास मत होना. बचपन में जब तुम एक गिलास दूध नहीं दे पाती थी मुझे, साहस और मजबूती शब्द पिलाती थी तुम. दुख और तकलीफ के इस समय में तुम्हारे पिलाए गए शब्दों से मैं अब भी मजबूत हूँ. माँ अपनी उम्मीद मत छोड़ना. मैंने एहसास किया है कि जेल मृत्यु नहीं है, ये मेरा पुनर्जन्म है. और मैं घर में तुम्हारी उस गोद में लौटूंगा जिसने उम्मीद और हौसले से मुझे पोषा. माँ मेरी आज़ादी के लिए मत डरना. दुनिया को बता दो मेरी आज़ादी खो गई है. क्या उन सभी जन के लिए आज़ादी पाई जा सकती है जो मेरे साथ खड़े हैं? धरती के दुख का कारण लाओ जिसमें मेरी आज़ादी निहित है. और उन्होंने ये भी लिखा है, मुझे खुद को उस मीठी भाषा में ये कविता लिखने की अनुमति नहीं दी गई थी जो तुमने मुझे शैशव अवस्था में सिखाई थी. प्यार के साथ तुम्हारा बच्चा जीएन साईबाबा, अंडा सेल, केंद्रीय जेल. जय भीम, लाल सलाम.
अरे साथी साई अमर रहे,
अमर रहे, अमर रहे.
साथी साई अमर रहे,
अमर रहे, अमर रहे.
साथी साई को लाल सलाम,
लाल सलाम, लाल सलाम.
साथी साई को जय भीम,
जय भीम, जय भीम.
साथी साई को जय भीम, लाल सलाम.
जय भीम, लाल सलाम.
शुरुआत करते हुए थोड़ा सा मैं साई बाबा है, उनकी मृत्यु और उनके मृत्यु से ज़्यादा जो उनका लाइफ और उनकी जो ज़िंदगी और उनका जो काम है उसको समझने के लिए जुड़ पाए हैं साथ में। प्रोफेसर साई बाबा की टेक्निकली कार्डियक अरेस्ट से मृत्यु हो गई 12 अक्टूबर को, बट हमारे लिए ये मान पाना या समझ पाना बहुत मुश्किल है कि एक साधारण से ऑपरेशन पोस्ट ऑपरेटिव प्रोसीजर्स की वजह से उनकी मृत्यु हुई, जिसमें लिटरली मैंने जब गूगल किया तो मुझे पता चला कि 1% लोग भी नहीं मरते हैं ऐसे ऑपरेशन के बाद। तो अभी इसी साल साई बाबा जब रिलीज हुए थे तो उन्होंने काफ़ी बार मीडिया को बताया कि कैसे अंडा सेल, जो नाखून का जो अंडा सेल है, उसने कम्प्लीटली उसने पूरी तरीके से साई बाबा के शरीर को तोड़ दिया। साई बाबा जो 90% डिसेबल थे और उनको बचपन में ही पोलियो हुआ था और अभी कोविड के वक्त में 2 बार उनको कोविड भी हुआ। तो इस बारे में जब मैं पढ़ रही थी तो एक जब आर्टिकल अपूर्वानंद जी का मैंने देखा तो उसमें उन्होंने कहा है कि अंग्रेजी में है ये पार्ट, our colleague Henry Babu made it his mission to campaign for the release of Sai Baba. What he was doing was dangerous, but we saw him calmly reminding the world that a wrong had been committed and Sai Baba had to be a free man. Finally, Henry Babu was punished for seeking justice. He too was arrested as an accused in the conspiracy of Bhima Koregaon violence. He has been in jail for the last 4 years while fighting for the freedom of Sai Baba. He was robbed of his own freedom by the state. ऐसे ही हम देखते हैं कि सुरेंद्र गडलिंग जी जो है, जो उनके अरेस्ट होने के पहले साई बाबा के लॉयर थे सेशंस कोर्ट और हाई कोर्ट में, उनको भी गिरफ्तार किया गया और साई बाबा खुद, जिनके बारे में अभी लोग बात रखेंगे, वो खुद भी और लोगों के लिए लड़ रहे थे। तो ऐसा देखते हैं कि इस चीज़ से मुझे मौलाना आज़ाद ने एक बात बोली थी कि हिस्ट्री बेयर्स विटनेस दैट व्हेनेवर द रूलिंग पावर्स took up arms against truth and justice, the courtroom served as the most convenient and plausible weapons. For a tyrannical and repressive government, there is no better weapon for wreaking vengeance and perpetrating injustice. Next to battlefields, it is in the courtrooms that some of the greatest acts of injustice in the history of the world have taken place. तो ये इस संबंध में हम ये भी देख सकते हैं कि कैसे फादर स्टैन स्वामी, उनकी मृत्यु हुई जब उनका ट्रीटमेंट चल रहा था और उसको तो साफ इंस्टीट्यूशनल मर्डर बोलने में कभी भी टकराना नहीं चाहिए, क्योंकि जिस तरीके से वो मदद की अपेक्षा कर रहे थे और जिस तरीके से उनको ट्रीट किया गया वो सब काफ़ी दिखाता है कि हमारा सिस्टम कैसे बना हुआ है। उसी तरीके से अभी एक्विटल के जस्ट पहले नहीं, 2 साल पहले पांडु नरोते जो आदिवासी युवक थे, सिर्फ 33 साल के थे, 33 इयर्स के थे, जब उनकी 2022 में मृत्यु हो गई, जो इसी केस में इन्वॉल्व थे। और उनके जब उनकी गिरफ्तारी हुई तो सेशंस कोर्ट ने बोला था कि बहुत कोट एंड कोट इंक्रिमिनेटिंग एविडेंस मिला था उनके खिलाफ गिरफ्तारी के वक्त। ये इंक्रिमिनेटिंग एविडेंस क्या था? किसी कोई ट्रेन टिकट थी, उनका कास्ट सर्टिफिकेट था, उनकी बेटी के से रिलेटेड कोई सर्टिफिकेट थे, ये थे उनके अगेंस्ट में इंक्रिमिनेटिंग एविडेंस। तो हम देख रहे हैं कि एक के बाद एक कैसे मतलब लोग ये सिस्टम को शहीद होते जा रहे हैं। वो अपनी साई बाबा में बहुत जिंदगी बाकी थी, वो जीना चाहते थे, वो आगे लड़ाई अपनी जारी रखना चाहते थे, लेकिन हम लोग काफ़ी युवा साथियों से जब बात कर रहे थे तो कोई भी मतलब ये समझ नहीं पा रहा है या मान नहीं पा रहा है कि उनकी मृत्यु हो गई है। तो इस बात को हम आगे बढ़ाते हुए थोड़ा आगे का प्रोग्राम ये करते हैं। तो मैं शुरुआत करूँगी बर्नार्ड डीमेलो से, जो कि जर्नलिस्ट और लेखक रहे हैं काफ़ी सारे पब्लिकेशंस में, और उनकी जो सबसे रिसेंट जो बुक है इंडिया आफ्टर नक्सलबारी अनफिनिश्ड हिस्ट्री, और वो पहले इकोनॉमिक एंड पॉलिटिकल वीकली के एडिटर रहे थे। एक दशक से ज़्यादा तक, और मंथली रिव्यू में वो लगातार लिखते रहते हैं और CPDR के मेंबर थे। तो वो हो सके तो प्रोफेसर साई बाबा की लाइफ का एक अगर हमारे सामने पक्ष रख सके।
They don't know how to kill me. I think I'd rather put it the way Sai himself. I'll refer to Professor G.N. Saibaba as we used to call him, friends of his, as Sai. So I'll refer to him as Sai. As Sai put it actually, and this is a book which contains poems and letters from prison. It's titled, "Why Do You Fear My Way So Much?" Why do you fear my way so much? So I think I'll focus on that. Sai's life cannot be adequately understood without situating him in an authentic history, and especially modern history of Indian society, of which he was a part. In other words, what I'm saying actually is what Sai experienced and what he did has had definite links. There were definite links with the historical processes and changes that were underway in India, as well as the class and other contradictions which affected him. When I say class contradictions, it's very clear, but the other contradictions, especially caste contradictions, as well as actually, I would say, racial contradictions in the context of, Adivasis facing racial discrimination in India. So these deeply affected him, these contradictions deeply affected him. So what I'm saying is basically, Sai has to be located in the times of which he was a part, which affected him. The ethos and the quintessence of those times must be taken into account in any kind of understanding of Sai. So this is the kind of framework that I adopt here. Now, briefly, I'd like to put these ideas up front rather than coming to them at the end. Actually, is Sai was born in 1967, and 1967 was the year that the Naxalbari movement took off. So revolution. But when we talk of revolution, and it's an unfinished revolution, more than 50 years have passed, 57 years. It's an unfinished revolution. But revolution always has to be seen alongside counter-revolution. So there's a revolution, counter-revolution dynamic. And in history, actually, very often, the counter-revolution, in India you call it the counter-insurgency. The counter-insurgency. The counter-revolution, in the counter-revolution, and this is carried out by the Indian state here, okay, the end necessarily justifies the means. You find this, and in my book, India After Naxalbari, although it goes far beyond Naxalbari and the Naxalbari movement over the last 50 years or more. It covers much more than that about India. But basically, counter-revolution, and the heart of it is the Indian state, where the end necessarily justifies the means. In such a context and in such an environment, for the revolution, there come times, and there are moments in the revolution, and this has happened over the last 57 years. In the revolution too, there are no restraints. No restraints in the fight to defend the revolution. So in the face of the counter-revolution, the brutality and inhumanity of the counter-revolution, there are moments in the revolution where there are no restraints in the fight to defend the revolution. Sai was very much a part of these times. He was very much a part of these times. But I'd like to say one thing that I've learned from history is that the violence of the oppressed is always preceded and provoked by the violence of the oppressors. The violence of the oppressed is always preceded and provoked by the violence of the oppressors. So we have to keep this in mind. Sai, and I'm being very upfront about this, Sai threw his lot with the wretched of the Indian earth. He joined a political and an ethical project. This project of revolution is not merely a political project, it is also an ethical project. In this political and ethical project, Sai struggled and he died. He died. They don't know how to kill me, but he died. And one of the main reasons why he died is the utter callousness of the Indian state, especially the Indian state's repressive apparatus and the failure of the judicial system that led to his death. But it was a political and an ethical project for which he struggled and he died. What was the crime of Sai? What was the crime? And I put crime in double inverted commas. What was the crime of Sai? Indeed, what is the crime of the Bhima Koregaon of 16? What is the crime of Sai? What is the crime of the Bhima Koregaon of 16, including Father Stan Swami? That crime, in my view, and I speak only for myself here, I do not speak on behalf of anyone else but myself. The crime of Sai is refusing to remain unmoved and inactive in an India where hundreds of millions of people have been the victims of capitalism's irrationality, brutality, and inhumanity. It is the crime of those, including Sai and the Bhima Koregaon 16, who know that despite the skill, the creativity, the ingenuity and the diligence of the Indian people, yet actually hundreds of millions of people are inadequately fed, miserably clothed, wretchedly housed, poorly educated, and without access to decent medical care. We cannot remain unmoved and inactive in such an India. That is what Sai stood for. Worse still, worse is something worse still. And this has happened in the new millennium, over the years of the new millennium, over the last 24 years. Monstrous income and wealth inequality. The rise of a monstrous income and wealth inequality. Together with this, the rise of Hindutva nationalism. Nationalism I put in inverted commas. An Indian variant of Nazism. Semi-fascist and sub-imperialist tendencies. There are people in this country who refuse to remain unmoved and inactive in the face of all this. And Sai was one of them. Let me then get to aspects of his life. And I'll do this very briefly because I think Shushmita and all your colleagues who came up earlier have already said a number of things. So I can be brief now. Sai was born in a small town, Amalapuram. This is in the East Godavari district. What was the East Godavari district? What we are referring to is coastal Andhra actually, coastal Andhra. And came from a middle peasant background, a middle peasant family background. At the age of 5, of course, he developed polio. 1967 India, 20 years after independence. The anti-polio vaccine had not reached the majority of the people. If it didn't reach middle peasants, then what about poor peasants and landless laborers and so on? The majority of the rural population. But here was a middle peasant family and the anti-polio vaccine had not reached them. 20 years after independence. His mother used to carry him in his arms to school actually. And he went on to BA, completed his BA, Andhra University, and then moved to Hyderabad. In 1987, he moved to Hyderabad. But he was struggling with polio, much of his problems were his own personal problems of struggling with polio and so on. But 87 to 89, he completed his MA in English Literature from Hyderabad University. He came under the influence of a number of persons. I don't know whether I should mention these names, but at least 2 of these intellectuals are still alive today. And given the lack of any freedom of expression and given the risk that these people might be harassed, I can't even express their names actually. He was deeply influenced by 2 Telugu intellectuals actually, and I can't mention their names actually. But besides that, and someone who has passed away, the poet and lyricist Sri Sri, the poet and lyricist Sri Sri of course had passed away I think in 1983 or around that time. Well known in Telugu literature and cinema. He's also later on the Kenyan author and academic. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think the first name is Boye. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Some of you would know his short story, The Upright Revolution, or Why Human Beings Walk Upright. Why human beings walk upright. Some of these influences on Sai, and Sai started coming to the meetings in Hyderabad. Met, of course, Gaddar and Varavara Rao. Varavara Rao was here with us sometime I think in 1989, 1990 or so on. He completed his PG diploma in teaching English in 1991. But then became a part of Veera Sangh, the Revolutionary Writers Association. He wrote poetry in Telugu and literary criticism. I think the journal of course, this is in Telugu and I don't speak this language, Srijana, where he published. And the focus was really on forms of knowledge that exclude Dalits and Adivasis from participation in Indian literature. Forms of knowledge that exclude Dalits and Adivasis from participation in Indian literature. So this was Sai. But in May 1992, the CPI-ML People's War was banned, and along with it, what the government thought were its mass organizations. The government claimed what the Union Home Ministry and the state government claimed to be frontal organizations. So all those so-called frontal organizations of CPI-ML party unity were banned in May 1992. And after that, actually, the All India People's Resistance Forum was floated. But very soon after it was floated, it got banned. It got banned. And, you know, there's another story to that and so on. I don't know how much I can get into all that. But basically, Sai joined the All India People's Resistance Forum, and he even became state secretary of the AIPRFP. But what brought Sai to the forefront of ethical politics, this political project, and this political and ethical project was actually prisoner struggles. In Andhra Pradesh in 1995, actually, there were massive struggles of prisoners in the jails, so in all the jails of Andhra Pradesh in 1995. And there was a solidarity movement that was organized around all this, like, from the outside. So, mass struggles by prisoners in the jails in 1995, and a solidarity struggle around this, a solidarity movement really outside. And Sai became one of the secretaries of this state solidarity committee, the state solidarity committee, which was organizing this. Of course, he also became national secretary of the IPRFP. There was a nationality question seminar, an international seminar, which was organized in Delhi in 1996. Actually, Sai was then the national secretary of the IPRFP, and then the Telangana state movement came up, and there was the famous Warangal Declaration. Some of you might know some of these things. The famous Warangal Declaration, the foundation of which was really, I would say, stolen by the TRS, the Telangana Rajya Samiti, which later came to power on the back of this movement, actually, very opportunistically. But then Sai moved to Delhi. Got a job in Ramlal Anand College, and registered for his PhD, actually. But at that time, actually, the Salva Judum, this whole Salva Judum, which was state financed, state backed, state armed, you know, so-called people's resistance against the Maoists, which was launched around 2005. And he particularly became active in the International League for People's Struggles. So this international dimension, I want to say some things, because a lot has appeared on social media, but some of these things have not appeared. And while researching for my book, I came across this, and I haven't written all these things in my book, but I'd just like to say that, and then I'll stop, actually. So I went to the US and he spoke about these things. The state-backed, state-armed, so-called people's resistance movement against the Maoist movement in southern Chhattisgarh, the Bastar division of Chhattisgarh. And Home Minister Chidambaram was ruffled. Later, Operation Green Hunt was launched in September 2009. And Sai went to Europe. And in Europe also he spoke about these things. The Union Home Ministry then, when Jan Myrdal came to India, I think this was in 2010, Gautam can correct me if I'm wrong, actually, these years and so on, I don't remember, but Jan Myrdal was in his 80s, and he came to India and he visited actually the guerrilla zones of the CPI Maoists and met the leadership there. And he wrote this book, Red Star Over India. Red Star Over India. The subtitle of this book, As the Wretched of the Earth Are Rising. As the Wretched of the Earth Are Rising. Red Star Over India. And Chidambaram and Co. again in the Union Home Ministry brought out this propaganda that Sai arranged the visit of Jan Mirdal to the guerrilla zones in southern Chhattisgarh on behalf of the CPI Maoists. But that was Sai. In 2013, I think it was September 12, 2013, his quarters were raided. There was a theft in Aheri, all the way in Gadchiroli. And the police land up in Delhi University, and claim that the stolen property is with Sai. They take away his laptop, PC, pen drives, books, some books, and so on. And that forms the basis of so-called evidence. Claim that he was working for the Maoists. Now there are various other things that I would like to say, but I'd like to actually just in another 2 minutes just wind this up, because this recent part, I think that most of you know, and some of you have already related these things, and I need not go over that. But one thing I'd like to say is that much in the social media he has been characterized as a human rights activist. But honestly, actually, Sai was never a member of the Andhra Pradesh Civil Liberties Committee, nor was he a member of the PUDR in Delhi, two places in which he lived. Yes, Committee for the Release of Political Prisoners, which was dubbed as a frontal organization. Yes, he was one of the founder members of the Committee for the Release of Political Prisoners. And in that sense, yes, you could call him also a human rights activist. But his main work was not as a human rights activist. He was campaigning against state repression. It was a political and an ethical project that he was engaged in. It was not part of the civil liberties and democratic rights movement. Now there are various things, and I need not get into this, but I'd like to, of course you have already said this thing, but I think Sai put it very well, you know. I was moved by this, and I don't know, when Sai was released actually in March this year, at a press conference actually, he was talking to the press. And it's about 38 minutes, it's on NewsClick, you can see it, but the last 4 or 5 minutes is very moving actually, where he talks about his mother who passed away on 1st August 2020, passed away of cancer. And he says, I think, and I'm paraphrasing him, that his mother brought him up so lovingly, took me in her arms to school. I think these are the words he uses. And when she died, I was not even allowed. When she was dying, I was not even allowed to go and meet her, although she was craving to meet me before she died. I was denied parole by the Bombay High Court, actually. This happened July 20th, 2020. Denied parole. And even after she died, for the conduct of the funeral and the funeral rites and so on, you know, again parole was denied by the Bombay High Court. My mother's dream was that I become a teacher, and you know, he says these things, and you know, it's I can't understand these things. I'll just complete. I can't understand these things. The threat to national security. Threat to national security. One who cannot remain unmoved and inactive in an India where all these things which I just talked about happen, is perceived as a threat to national security and is kept in jail for 8.5 years. He came to the jail only with polio, which he developed when he was 5 years of age. But when he left the jail, when he was acquitted finally, he had multiple ailments. Almost all his organs were failing actually. This is what he said there. Almost all his organs were failing. So really, they don't know how to kill me. No, they know how to kill me. Thank you.
I will request Advocate Mihir Desai to speak next. Advocate Mihir doesn't need an introduction. He has been a human rights lawyer who has fought for the release of many prisoners, and most recently the Bhima Koregaon people arrested in the Bhima Koregaon conspiracy case. He got bail orders for the release of Tista Setalwar, Dr. Anand Tumre. After getting order for release of Mahesh Raut in September last year, the Supreme Court has stayed it for over 1 year. He is also the president of PUCL Maharashtra and a leading voice not just as a lawyer but as a vocal spokesperson for the marginalized. He has been a fearless and vocal critic of government policies, whether of BJP or previous Congress regime. And he has also stood by young people who, whenever they have been arrested in protest cases. That was my
I was involved in Sai's case only peripherally, in the sense that I had gone to argue his medical bail in before the Nagpur bench. The reason why I am saying this is because at that time, that was in 2018, that was just after Surendra, who was his lawyer, had been arrested. June 2018. Because I was arguing the medical bail, I had to go through the medical papers of Sai. And it was even in 2018 that the doctors had very categorically said that he needed a gallbladder surgery, which finally happened in 2024 and which finally led to his death. So this is not something which happened suddenly in 2024. This was happening right from the beginning. But I won't speak much about his what happened to him medically, and I think I will cover that. But I just wanted to add two things. That there are two people who we must also congratulate today. One is a person who is a lawyer who did a stellar job in arguing the case. One of the leading lawyers who did a stellar job in arguing his case before the Nagpur bench, and that is Mr. Pradeep Mandyan, who is with us today, and he's the. And the second person, who actually created the foundation for what was argued in the High Court through his cross-examination, through his perseverance, through following up every procedural aspect and substantive aspect, who is unfortunately not with us today. Here, he is with us. That is Mr. Surendra Dadli, who was his lawyer in the session. And of course Gayatri, who got him the medical bail in Bombay High Court. So I think it's very important to note their contributions. Why was he in jail? And why was he released? These are the two questions, because I think what Sai was, what he did, is all what Sushmita as well as Bernard mentioned. I'll just focus a little bit on the case and why was he in jail. Of course, I mean, politically he was in jail for X, Y and Z reasons which we all know about. But in terms of legality, why was he in jail? See, according to the version of the prosecution, the police, on 1st September 23, there are three people who are arrested from a bus stop. These are Mr. Prashant Rahi, Vijay Tirki, Mahesh Tirki, Pandu Narote, and Hem Mishra. These are the three people who are arrested allegedly from a bus stop because they were having some suspicion discussion with each other. So these three people are arrested on the basis of what they say to the police. Two others, namely Prashant Rahi and Vijay Tirke, are arrested on 1st September 23. And police then discover that actually Hem Mishra had come to Gadchiroli to give a pen drive which had been given to him by Sai in Delhi to give it to somebody in the forest. I mean, this is the story. Okay, this is the story as to why he was, and therefore then they raided Sai's place on 7th September 23, and finally after nearly 8 months on 9th May 14, he was arrested. 9th May 14 he was arrested, and in March 24 of course he was released, acquitted. So this was the thing, and what was the ground of arrest? That things were found from his computer, things were found from his house, from the other people certain pamphlets were found, which basically showed that they were part of the Naxalite. They were active parts involved in terrorist activities. This is basically the story which was given. I mean, the question is whether they should have got bail immediately. I think that's a wrong question. Question should be whether they should have been arrested in the first place at all or not. And I would say that they should not have been inside jail even for an hour. Bail comes later if you are arrested. They should not have been arrested at all. None of these five. On the basis of the evidence which is there, they should not have been arrested. Anyway, they were arrested. Bail rejected. Trial goes on. During the trial, medical bail is rejected by the Nagpur High Court. Then the Bombay High Court grants medical bail for 3 months. In the meanwhile, the judge in Nagpur gets wild at Bombay High Court having, given this kind of bail to Saibaba. So then the Nagpur bench not only cancels the bail, but passes a separate 60-page order saying how the Chief Justice cannot take away case from me and pass this order. I mean, there are a lot of. I mean, politics doesn't happen it happens inside the courtrooms quite a bit. I'm just mentioning that. Anyway, after that, so his bail is cancelled. After the 3 months, he's taken back. In the meanwhile, he's convicted by the Sessions Court. After the Sessions Court is convicted, the matter goes to High Court. High Court, the conviction order is, in my view, an absolute absurdity. The order which convicted him is a complete absurdity. But anyway, he's convicted. Matter goes to High Court. Medical bail is not granted, but the matter is taken up after a few months, few years, and the division bench of the High Court gives a judgment which acquits all of them on the basis that certain procedural mandatory requirements of the law had not been followed. Therefore, all five are let off, saying that the entire institution of the case itself was wrong. So they are let. Fine. On the next day, the matter goes to Supreme Court. We all know about the wonderful Saturday hearing which happened in the Supreme Court. Unheard of, because in Saturdays, yes, sometimes they sit, but they sit on Saturdays to give people liberty, not to take away their liberty. This is the day, this is the first time Supreme Court had a sitting on a Saturday to take away the liberty of a person, and a stay is granted by the Supreme Court. After that stay, after about 10 months, the matter is sent back to the High Court to give it a hearing. In the meanwhile, the judge who had acquitted this person is summarily transferred to another high court. He knows why he is transferred. We all know why he is transferred, and he resigns on the same day, the Bombay High Court judge, and says, I don't want to continue as a judge here, and he resigns. This is what happens. Anyway, despite that, and that's something which we must appreciate, the two judges of the Bombay High Court who then heard the matter acquit all five of them. Okay? Acquit all five of them. Acquit all five of them, not just on six of them. Yeah, six, because one of them in the meanwhile, unfortunately, had passed away. That is Pandu Narohe. He passed away at the age of about 36 in jail because he got swine flu for which there was no treatment available. I'm sure Gayatri will talk about the medical situation in jails, but so that was the thing. So all are acquitted. Now remember one thing, that all these, there are 11 reasons why all these people are acquitted. It's not a technicality. Okay? There are 11 reasons why these people are acquitted. Okay? Do I have 3-4 minutes more? Okay. I'll quickly tell you what those reasons are in 30 seconds each. That will give me 3 minutes, right? Okay, fine. First of all, the court says that since you are being prosecuted under UAPA, the draconian law, there is a requirement that a sanction has to be given by an authority, by the secretary, etc., after a report is submitted by an independent authority to the secretary. That means, but by giving the report, whether UAPA should be invoked or not, there has to be an application of mind. You have to go through the evidence to find out whether UAPA is made out or not. The court comes to the conclusion that there is no application of mind by the authority who made the report. There is no application of mind by the authority who granted sanction. So at both levels, okay, there is complete non-application of mind. If you do that, if there is non-application of mind, the entire case collapses. So the case collapses, the matter ends. That's point number one. Point number two, they say that, and I'll just go to 5 or 6 points, I won't get into all 11. But the point number two, they say that the search and seizure, because everything, the court says that the entire case depends on certain documents and certain electronic evidence. That's what it depends on. It doesn't depend on anything else. There is no act of violence. There is no recovery of arms. There is no recovery of money. Nothing like that. So it's everything depends on certain documents, pamphlets, and electronic material recovered. They say that the search carried out in respect of all 3 batches, that is the first batch where 3 of them were arrested from the bus stop, second batch when Prashant and Vijay Tirke are arrested, and the third where Saibaba's house is raided. All 3 are in complete violation of all mandatory provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code. All. That's the second thing they say. They in fact suggest very categorically that actually these people were arrested much before they were arrested. Okay. So they were detained earlier, and they were shown to be arrested later. Okay. And things seem to have been planted. Okay. This is the kind of conclusion which is suggested. Things seem to have been planted. One thing. Second thing, a very important aspect. As far as Saibaba is concerned, the electronic evidence, they say that there is a method of collecting electronic evidence so that it's secure electronic evidence, so that its integrity is maintained. One is you take hash value, second is you provide the details of what the electronic evidence, what is the hard disk you are taking, what is its number, etc., etc. Nothing. It's not available. This is important not only for this case but generally. The hash value is a central thing for, if you are taking about electronic evidence. Second thing, as far as Sai is concerned, Sai and the punch were kept outside the house when the search was going on inside. So you don't know what is planted, what is not planted. So the court comes to the conclusion this is absolutely bogus, you can't do it. Third, The police said that look, videography was done of the search, but the video was never produced. It was never produced in court. If you have done videography, you yourself claim that you have done videography of the search to show that the search was done properly, fairly, etc. Where is that video? Nobody produced that video. So this is about search, seizure, etc. So they said that none of the documents on which you are saying that these people having, we have found this material can at all be relied upon, because the integrity is completely lost. That's what they say. The next thing they say is that there are confessions. Two of the first persons who were arrested, Mahesh and Pandu, had allegedly given confession.